them succeed in life.
Greta McRee, 4th grade teacher at Cason Lane Academy, is the Doug Young Educator of the Month, sponsored by City Tile and Floor Covering on Spring Street. Nominate an educator at WGNSradio.com. The Blue Raider fan source for officially licensed Middle Tennessee gear is Raider Tees. T-shirts, caps, sweats in all sizes, designs, colors, children's to plus sizes. Raider Tees has decals and license plates to show everyone your favorite team. Plus, check out their wide selection of Blue Raider art, jewelry, even golf tee markers. Show your Blue Raider pride with the largest selection of Blue Raider merchandise anywhere by shopping Raider Tees, 910 Ridgely Road, just before the bridge over Broad behind Chewy's.
Rutherford Issues with Brian Barrett on FM 101.9 and AM 1450 Murfreesboro, FM 100.5 Smyrna, and streaming at WGNSradio.com.
Rutherford Issues is powered by Middle Tennessee Electric. As a member of MTE, you have access to educational resources to help you tailor your energy use to your lifestyle. Interested in electric vehicles? MTE has incentives. You can learn about those and learn about EVs and connect with others who share your interest. DriveEV.com. Online, we've got Keith Bratcher joining us today. And Keith, tell us all a little bit about some of the things that you're involved in. Let's see. I know you're on the road board, right?
That's correct. Yes, sir. I'm on the road board. Been on the beer board for about 29 years.
29 years?
I've been on the beer board 29 years. First board I ever got on there in 1994.
Mm-hmm.
Seen some interesting things on there over the years, but for the most part went pretty smooth. But used to be still involved in things, with firefighting. Retired there from the fire department in 2018. But
that was city, right?
That city of Murfreesboro.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. I was there for 35 years, but still involved with what goes on with firefighters and advocate for firefighter things. But
well, that's awesome. State Representative Mike Sparks. Why is there someone with blue lights trailing you coming down Broad Street? I mean, what was?
Because I was speeding.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I was running late.
Really? Keith said that you called him and then you texted me and said you were on the way and said you were on Broad Street. And I finally asked Keith. I said, "Where on Broad Street?"
84 Lumber.
Is he still in Smyrna?
Now is that Broad Street at 84 Lumber?
Uh-huh.
All right, I didn't know. Highway 41.
No, it
Murfreesboro
changes
Road.
when you get into Smyrna. It's called what?
Lowry. It's got a lot of names.
I know it does.
In fact, it's also named Major James Walls Highway for 3 miles. My mentor.
Yeah.
If y'all remember the Omni Hut, I always consider Major Walls a mentor. We got to name that after him. 6 or 7 years ago.
So it's Lowry, and then it turns to that somewhere around Omni Hut, right? And then back to Lowry?
Yeah, it's in front of the Omni. We put the sign right there in front of Joe Wall's place, North American Evergreens. And Sally was still alive at the time, if folks remember Sally Walls. Major Walls had passed. But it goes from there to about 840,
Well, I know you and Keith go way back. Obviously, you had a plan and what you wanted to talk about today with Keith here.
Oh, we don't have a plan. We're just gonna wing it.
I
Brian.
figured that was you.
We're just gonna wing it. No, this guy. I was thinking about Keith last night. This guy's one of my heroes. I mean, I know I've never told him that, so don't get choked up, Keith. But when I was a young county commissioner 20 years ago, this guy was on like every board, and I used to think, man, that dude's on a lot of boards. But you know what? One thing I learned about him, he's passionate. So you want passionate people serving. You don't want people up there to just get a small little paycheck every month. And sometimes, unfortunately, I see that. But this dude, I remember you calling me about Jefferson Pike years ago. He's on the road board, and he said, man, something's got to be done out here. And I remember going out there. Brian, you probably remember this. And he said how dirty the road gets near the landfill. And I guess that's your road board area. And I drove out there, and I see one of them street sweepers on the side of the road. So I pulled up the street sweeper, and I said, hey, how often are you out here? He goes, well, I'm out here, I thought he said every day, okay, except weekends, is what he told me. And I noticed a truck on the side of the road sitting there with a busted windshield, and I didn't really think about it. I said, hey, man, what happened to that truck over there? And it was, probably 250 feet away, 200 yards away, somewhere there. And he said, well, I don't know, but there's a manager. Go over and talk to him, manager from the landfill. So I pull up and I get out of my car and I walk up there and I hear a guy said, hey, Mike, how you doing? And it was a guy that knew me from high school. I think it was Brian Sturdovich. Brian
Gafford.
Brian Galford. Yeah, Brian, good for you. Brian Galford. He was a big baseball player. And I was like, hey, man, what's going on? And he had a cut on his neck. And what had happened, a rock fell out of one of the trucks right there where the dude was doing the little, what do you call it, the curtain, but he did it, I guess, while he was driving in the Jefferson Pike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the rock fell out. It hit his dash. It bent the steering wheel. I mean, I couldn't believe this happened. It bent the steering wheel, grazed his neck, cut his neck, and went out the back windshield. He couldn't find the rock. I mean, the stone was gone. It had to be the size of a softball, I'm guessing. But that dude'd been lucky to be alive. And I remember I called, I think it was Jimmy Hart at the Day News Journal, and said, man, you need to cover this. And they paid for his windshield, fixed his truck, but it was on camera. They went back and looked at the camera. And but that's just one example of how God used this dude, because 3 hours later, I was at Transportation Committee at the House. I was Vice Chairman of Transportation, and I was talking about the need to widen Jefferson Pike. I mean, we're finally getting it done after all these years. But that's just one example of this, brother, right here. Another thing is when we had those dope dealers selling dope to our kids, the synthetic weed and the mollies and the K2, people may remember that. And this guy right here, because they put a raid together, TBI and local law enforcement, and raided a lot of these markets. I think it was called Operation Snuff. And this dude was the chairman of the beer board, and he goes out and bam, starts pulling these markets beer licenses. You hit him in the pocketbook, and those are just some of the few examples I've seen where this guy steps up and serves the community. A lot of people may not see what he does behind the scenes,
Well, when you talk about road board, beer board, those are all very important things that go on, but it's, Keith, not one of those that, gets the light constantly shining on those committees and things of that nature. But we have to have people that are willing to serve, and that's kind of where, in my mind, I wanted to talk with you, because it seems like it's harder and harder and harder to get people who are willing to serve the community because of all the mess that goes on, just the vitriol on both sides, and it's hard to get people who want to step up and do something like that.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it is, I'm like Mike, I was born and raised in Murfreesboro. I've been here all my life, so I've seen Murfreesboro when it's just little. So I think, I've been here all these years, so I really want to see, the community prosper and do well. And that's talking about Jefferson Pike. When I very first got elected to the road board in 2002, Jefferson Pike was one of the main things, I wanted to kind of see get going, and just got that going last year. So, it's taken almost 20 years, sometimes the government wheels turn slow, but they turn. But, and then, speaking of the beer board, I was the first board I ever got on, and just been passionate about things. I think the first thing really got me to want to get on that board back then was we had somewhat of a problem with beer being sold to minors. And so collectively through the beer board and the sheriff's department back then, Truman Jones was the sheriff, and got with them, and they started doing spot stings and checks and stuff like that. So we kind of got that under, as far as sale of beer to minors, kind of under control. And so they still continue to do those things today. And then I served on Board of Zoning for a little while, came off of that in 2013. I was on that for about 9 years. So that's a board that you have to have, but it's not a very popular one to be on as well, because you're going to make somebody mad no matter what decision you make.
Now, some of those things are appointed, right? It's not like, but for the road board, you run for that seat.
Yeah, the road board is elected. And the beer board and Board of Zoning, it is appointed by the you're approved by the full commission. That's correct. That's correct.
So you've got a couple of ways to help serve your community. But I guess, Mike, my point in that is, Keith and I were just talking before you got here when you were almost pulled over on Broad Street. But just talking about what we saw at the state capitol this year, and I'm not going to get into the details about it, but when you have to have armed state troopers to take you to the bathroom, or why would someone want to get involved in politics? I mean,
you tell me. Sometimes I question myself, like, how much longer do I want to do this? But great question. While we're going through all that chaos, I was painting the house next door. We're trying to get our house ready to sell, and I was painting a room, and I was thinking, like, man, how much longer do I want to do this? Do I want to deal with this? Because I get upset with my own party. It ain't just these other groups. I get upset with our own leadership. I mean, they didn't pass my gun safe legislation. The Senate dropped the ball, so that made me upset. My psych bed bill, help with mental health, some powerful lobbyists kicked it to next year. Those things make a man want to cuss. I mean, they really do.
I heard your buddy at the safe store in Nashville talking about it, and he was not very happy either. I just got off the phone with him. I invited him to a prayer breakfast we've got in Laverne tomorrow at 10 o'clock over at Laverne City Hall with Brenda Bryant at the rear of the multipurpose building. But anyways, it does get under your skin. And I was painting the house, and I was thinking about my dad. My dad was World War II, and he flew 24 bombing raids in Germany, a B-17, shot down, he'd always tell me when a plane goes down, he said, there's 10 men going down. He always told me, son, that's 10 men that lost their lives. And the 8th Air Force lost a lot of men in World War II. And I was thinking about my dad. He couldn't just say, oh, I don't want to go in this B-17 anymore. I'm going home. I'm calling mom. Then I thought about the 58,200 Vietnam veterans we lost that were only 22 years old, many of them. They couldn't go home. And I started thinking, am I going to let this stuff run me out? But it does get to you, man, because it's like, you want to make a difference, and then you worry about your family. Antifa was in front of my house, 4 years ago? Antifa was there, and at 5 a.m. with yelling at a bullhorn and beating a drum. But then again, it's a badge of honor. I mean, I'm glad Antifa was at the house. I'm glad. I mean, I hate to say they woke up all my neighbors, but they did. They woke up my wife. I wasn't there. I was in California, General Hastings, watching them do maneuvers. But it's really a badge of honor. But here's the thing about these groups. Antifa never called me. They never emailed me. They never wanted to have a conversation about the issues. These people are paid. They're paid to be divisive and cause chaos. Now, I'm not saying Justin Jones is up there just to cause chaos. I think he means well. I think he's misled. And I think this next woke generation, it's a threat to our republic. I mean, if they're influencing 12-year-olds, see, these people, I said this live on the radio the other day, another station, these folks are playing chess. We're playing checkers. My party is looking to next week, to tomorrow. Maybe they look out next year. My party is guilty of not looking out for the next generation. And we better wise up. The church has got to get involved with this, because if the rest of them fall in line with this cancel culture wokeness, it will affect our whole republic as we know it, and it's a threat to the state of our national security as well. Well, you use some interesting terms there, woke and all that, and I just wonder the Joe out there and Jack and Sally that see that stuff, and maybe they are vote Democrat, maybe they vote Republican, but they have an eye roll. I think there's so many people there in the middle. That's probably the majority, but it's the headline grabbing on really both sides.
That goes back to the state of the media that you've heard me talk about for how many years now? For years, many years. If the Phil Williams of the world is only going to cover chaos and divisiveness because they want better ratings, where 90% of the media is controlled by 5 corporate interests, that is also a threat to our democracy. Look at the Day News Journal. I mean, how many reporters do they have investigating? nothing against Scott Broden. I like Scott Broden. If Scott's listening, he's not going to cover my gun safe bill. He's not going to cover my psych bed bill. He's not going to cover my bill about affordable housing. He's not covering those issues. And here's what's sad, Scott. Neither is a Tennessean. Now, WTVF, they did a story on that illegal dumping bill that I had last year, which increases the felony, gave the judge more leeway to work folks if they were caught illegally dumping on the side of the road. We passed that. WTVF did interview me about that story. The local papers, they're not covering this stuff. There's a real void. I mean, WGNS will. There's no doubt you're getting raw truth on the air, but y'all are, you're limited on your resources. You can only do so much, but that's the state of journalism today.
Yes. I also believe that, you can go anywhere just because of the prevalence of sources. You can go anywhere and get someone that speaks what you believe in your mind anywhere, whether you're conservative, whether you're a Democrat. You can find a source that you agree with.
Echo chambers.
Yeah. So,
but you're not learning when I'm just going to speak to my church. I'm preaching to the choir. I like to be in those environments where people disagree with you, because that's where you learn. I mean, that I just put the form in front of you. That's a lot of the folks that have been up there about gun control, gun safety. Well, I met with them. Some lawmakers aren't going to meet with them. See what they've got? Safe storage of firearms was one of their issues. My bill, sadly, didn't get taken up in the Senate this year. I don't know what's going on over there on their side. I guess because it mentioned guns. But I'm trying to get the governor to carry legislation. I think the governor will carry it. I think what the governor will do is make it better than we were doing, because ours is just tax exemption for 1 year. If you want to buy a gun safe, or you want to find any kind of a gun safety devices, they're tax free right now. But see, they're going to expire June the 30th. But I'm hoping the governor will take it up in special session, and I'm hoping he'll take up my psych bed bill. And don't listen to the lobbyist. Listen to the real needs. When the ER over here at Stonecrest told me personally months ago, I had Secretary of State Trey Harger with me, that every bed is full, a lot of it's mental health, and all of a sudden I get handed a bill that would offer relief, and then lobbyists kill it. So what's going on? See, we don't need the legislature to be controlled by lobbyists. We need it to be controlled by the people, and that's why you have a voice, whether it's Keith Bratcher on the beer board or on the road board. You have a voice, or you have a voice with me and others. And if they don't listen to you, vote them out of office. But my psych bed bill, there's no lobby. And I did reach out to Sam Stockard, hoping Sam would cover it. Hopefully he will.
Let me ask this to you, Keith, because kind of in the same fashion, we can say, journalism is dead or whatever, but there are people who are. My question is, what happens to all of the people that are in the middle? They have strong beliefs, but it seems like we're just too far to the left or to the right, but that's not where the majority of Americans live, and we can't seem to get along. And if you can't get along, how are you ever going to do what's best for your communities or your state or the country? I mean, it's just really difficult right now.
Yeah. Well, I know from my own personal thing about when I, like when I serve on the road board, I guess just being in touch with people in your community. And a lot of people, they may they may run for an office, and then they kind of get away from, sometimes Nashville's not too far away, but sometimes they get in Nashville and they forget who they get involved with, what's going on there, and they forget about who they really represent back in their community, or they even get elected as far as U.S. Senate, and they get in Washington, D.C., and they forget really back home who they represent. So I, as myself, I've never forgotten who I represented, where I come from. I'm here. I want to do what's best for the community. So I just say, just stay involved with the people that you represent, and make sure you, just like Mike said, make sure you carry the view of what the people want, not necessarily private interest or whatever. Because
I'm not articulating it well, but there's a frustration that we're too far to either side when the balance is in the middle somewhere. And how are we ever going to work together when we see divisiveness like it is? I don't know. I'm concerned about that.
And I don't want to, but I'm going to kind of go there. I tell you what, I was raised in the Baptist church, still am, and I tell you what, I think when you go back and you look at the way things are done, you take prayer out of schools, when you take God out of anything, and that's what this whole country was founded on. And I think in the last years we say, hey, what's going on here? I think when you take God out of stuff, I think this is what you get. So I think you gotta get back to our Creator and start living right and start treating neighbors like neighbors. And I know when I was a kid growing up, and I'm sure you all were too. I mean, I could be 4 or 5 blocks over on my bicycle and maybe knocked over a trash can. Well, my parents were going to know about it before I got home because those people knew who I was. There's people who live right beside each other right now. They don't even know their neighbor. Yeah. So I kind of think that's a little bit of where we need to get back to.
Some good points there. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and wrap up our conversation. Keith Bratcher is joining us today, along with State Representative Mike Sparks, here on Rutherford Issues. Back in a flash.
The Garden Patch Thrift Shop on Spring Street, across from the tall NHC building.
We've expanded our store. We've increased it about 600 square feet. We would just be very excited for everybody to come check us out.
Proceeds from sales benefit Greenhouse Ministries, a faith-based nonprofit serving the underserved here in Murfreesboro.
We were able to put merchandise into our store that we previously haven't had displayed: maternity clothes, scrubs, activewear, pajamas.
The Garden Patch Thrift Shop on Spring Street in downtown Murfreesboro.
If you want to get some barbecue, I'll tell you how to do it. Head for the Slick Pig and you're into it. Just walk through the door at 1920 East Main and your nose will send a message right to your brain. Say, smells good. And barbecue. Slick Pig. We got ribs and beans. Got spicy wings. Slick Pig.
A Murfreesboro tradition. 1920 East Main.
Rutherford Issues on News Radio WGNS.
Back on Rutherford Issues today, and we've got Keith Bratcher here and also State Representative Mike Sparks. And another big area with road board that you deal with, Keith, is infrastructure and roads and bridges and all that kind of thing, and all that work that went on to get Jefferson Pike the way it is. But that's one example of one road, and it seems like we're so far behind. And was talking with the Rutherford County School Board member the other day, and in the next 3 years expecting to add almost 8,000 kids in 3 years to the school system. So they have moms and dads, and they're on the roads, and so it's like we can't ever catch up.
Oh, absolutely. We were just talking about it earlier. The governor this year just signed into a bill. It's the Governor's Transportation Modernization Act. And I think, I think he invested a total of about $3 billion, maybe statewide. Mike, and you can attest to that. I think it broken down for Rutherford County. I think it was about $7 million. Of course, that's going to be split up between the city of Murfreesboro, Smyrna, Laverne. I think the county, Rutherford County Highway Department, I think we're going to receive about $3 million of that. So that's going to help us to definitely pave a lot more roads, do a lot more roads than have in the past. Matter of fact, I just had a Highway Commission meeting on Monday, and matter of fact that money we can only use for state aid road projects. And matter of fact, we just approved a couple of state aid roads projects on Monday. One was about $1.3 million, and another one was about $2.3 million. So a lot of people ask, what is a state aid road? There's really about 3 categories to become a state aid road, but the main one is if you have a county road that links from state road to state road. Mm-hmm. And matter of fact, we just did we just approved to pave Big Springs Road, and that goes between Bradaville Road and.
What about his road? He's been griping about the road. Aren't you going to talk about it, Brian?
Yeah, you talking about?
Did.
Yeah, he's talking about Thompson Lane and where he lives there off of Leanna Road.
He sends me pictures of the traffic all the time.
Yeah, well, Thompson.
It's bad,
Lane,
isn't it? Though I mean, really
bad.
Well, a lot of times people, they really don't understand. They, and try to educate them all the time. A lot of times people think, road, whatever, they think, well, we just call the highway department, But like in the city of like Thompson Lane, where he's talking about, Thompson Lane runs all the way from Old Fort Parkway, all the way through the city, all the way turns into Compton Road as it crosses Memorial. But that is a state route. And a lot of times people say, hey, Keith, can you fix so-and-so or see about getting so-and-so fixed? Well, it's a city road. Sometimes, so people don't know if they're in the county or city, and we in the county, we take care of paving all our roads. In the city, they contract all their stuff out, which, don't get me wrong, even if it's a state road that's in my route, we have contacts, for people at the state, and we forward that on and try to get it fixed and taken care of as fast as possible. Not as quick as if it's a county road. You contact me usually. Greg Brooks and his staff, they're very attentive if it's a county road, day or two, maybe even that day. And I just can't, while I got an opportunity, I just can't say enough. I brag on them all the time. The Rutherford County Highway Department and Greg Brooks and his staff, I mean, man, they do a tremendous job every day. And I hate to mention names, but I do want to give a shout out. They always say, do you want to talk to the man in charge or the lady who knows what's going on? Miss Mary Hickerson, she has been there for a long time. She's the one that does all the she takes care of all the book work, all the finance. She keeps us in line and what's going on. And Greg and his staff, his assistants, Derek Manning and Randy Ward, and I you put names out there, but there are so many individuals. Every day people come and say, hey, Keith, y'all paved Betty Ford Road. That's near me. And the roads that they do is just phenomenal. And they say, I tell them all the time, I like to take the credit, but I can't. I say, hey, you know what? It's the people at the highway department, man. They do a great job of keeping these roads looking good every day. And keeping the side of the roads cut. So whether it's the guy that's out there on a paving crew, he's on a tractor cutting the side roads, if you're in the office, they all really work together really well. And I just tell people, hey, just go a few counties north, south, east, or west of Rutherford, and we're second. Rutherford County Highway Department is second to nobody. So,
yeah, it's an important thing. But as we see growth in businesses, your little 4-lane Memorial Boulevard, is not going to be able to handle the traffic that's coming in. And we see it on South Church Street, Salem Highway. Boy, what a headache that was. And then that new stretch was built. And then start on the other leg. But is that going to handle all the traffic that's moving out into that area?
Just this morning I seen in the news, it was 77 minutes to get from Smyrna to Nashville. Speaking of the media, nothing against Phil Williams if he's listening, but the governor, the General Assembly, we invested $3 billion, $3 billion with a B in the Transportation Modernization Fund to help on all this congestion. on the choice lanes, provided $300 million to expand the state aid road program for local road projects. I mean, this stuff needs to be talked about. You know, the Scott Brodens of the world need to cover this kind of stuff and cover the Thompson Lane, cover the Jefferson Pikes that's coming to fruition. But I deal with that every day. Well, no, almost every day, dealing with that traffic. We've got to do something. People want to move to Tennessee. There's no doubt. It's one of the greatest states to live, work, and play, and retire. People want to be here. But until we get our cost under control, because this is all this stuff that I'm bragging about with the governor, General Assembly, record tax cuts, record investments, this is not sustainable, though, Brian. We can't. This is not going to be every year. We're going to run into some dark times. I think next year is going to be we're probably going to head into recession. A lot of economists are saying that, and you can't continue to fund at the levels we've been funding. That includes education.
Well, unfortunately, our time's gotten away. Guys, I appreciate you coming in today. It's been good to catch up with Keith Bratcher and State Representative Mike Sparks. Don't forget, check the podcast if you missed any of the show.
Hello, friends. Lenny Farmer with Jenny